This is Thank You Mama, weekly lessons from mothers all around the world. I often get asked how I find so many fascinating guests for this podcast. And the answer is I often read or hear about a woman I'd love to interview, and then I just reach out. If I'm lucky, she says yes. And sometimes my friends come with ideas for guests. And then sometimes there are guests that are pitched to me either by themselves or by their publicists. And these pitches can sometimes be horribly wrong. And I love those horribly wrong pitches because I can use them for my public relations class. I just love teaching my students what not to do. Like, do not pitch a male guest for a podcast that's interviewing women. And sometimes I receive pitches that really get me giddy with excitement. And this is what happened when I received a pitch with tough as a mother in subject. And I honestly didn't even need to read the rest of the email. I just knew I wanted to have this woman on my show. And then it turned out it's not one woman, it's two women. Two fascinating women, and that their book, Tough as a Mother, Women in Sports, Working Moms, and the Shared Traits That Empower Us All, is a true gem. I loved reading the book. So I'm very, very excited to announce Emmy Award-winning sports broadcaster Jenn Hildreth and Fox Sports Senior Vice President for Talent Relations Aimee Leone. And I can tell you, you are in for a treat because not only do you get 2-for-1, but you get some beautiful lessons, interesting and deeply valuable thoughts, and inspiring wisdom. Enjoy. Hi, and welcome to Thank You Mama. My name is Anna Teider, and today I have not one, but two guests, two amazing guests. I'm very excited for this conversation. My guests today are Jenn Hildreth and Aimee Leone. Will you both please tell me a little bit more about the book, and then I'd like to hear about yourselves and your life stories.
Sure. Well, I can jump in. This is Jenn. This book was definitely a passion project for both Aimee and I think we each had our ideas separately that we wanted to do something about motherhood and about our own experiences, but also about supporting specifically working moms, just because of what we went through ourselves and then just seeing other women around us trying to navigate this space as well. And really what we tried to do was write the book that we both wish we could have had and that we wanted to make sure other women have, so that they feel supported during a time that can be really stressful, really isolating, really challenging, when women are questioning whether or not they actually can have both a career and a family. And if nothing else, we wanted to empower them to know that they are, in fact, tough as a mother, even if they may not believe it. And we did it through the lens of women in sports, because that is where Aimee and I both have spent our careers. I have a background as an athlete as well, so it brought some of that into it. But it is, we really wanted this to be for all moms, all women who are considering becoming moms, whether you like sports or not. And so this is what we call kind of like our joint third baby. We each have two kids. Aimee's are older, but yeah, this is our third child, and we're very proud of it.
Yeah, and as Jenn said, so my kids are a little bit older. Mine are full-on adults. They pay their own rent. It's an amazing victory. And back in the day, I was part of the, kind of lived through a lot of the women's rights movement here in the US, and being a part of that and seeing the transition of so many women from not working outside the home to really having full-on careers, and some balancing that with family. But I found in my experience, I saw a lot of women now entering these professional areas that they hadn't really been in before and just working, going full steam ahead. Some decided not to have families and just focus on their careers. And then there were those who stayed at home and had families. And it was a little bit of a confusing time for me as a child looking up to these women. I knew it was transformational, but I wasn't sure that you could still do both. And that was something as I continued to grow that I really wanted to focus on. And there weren't that many women in my line of sight who managed to have both. And when Jenn and I connected, we talked so much about the challenges that working moms face, the unique challenges that working moms face. And we spent so much time like just bonding over this that it was almost, this book was almost a natural extension of our relationship and our conversations. And as we had them, we just realized how much we both needed them. And shame that half a generation later, she still didn't have like this full-on sisterhood. So we decided to build that for other working moms in the thick of it now.
Before I want to continue talking about the book because I find it fascinating and so important. But before we do, can you give me your backgrounds a little bit? Because we all learn from each other's life stories. How did you get to sports and where you are now? Jenn, do you want to start?
Sure. I don't always like to be the bossy one jumping in first.
No.
We have a very good partnership. We're good together. We're a team. So, but yes, I'm happy to go first. So I played sports all my life. I loved growing up playing sports, and I knew that I also really loved to write and read. And so when I went to college, continued to play sports, and I started thinking about what career I could have that would keep me connected to sports, because I knew playing them was not in my future as a professional. So then I went into journalism and was looking to either go print or broadcast, whichever came first. I wound up getting an opportunity with a newspaper in Atlanta Journal-Constitution, where I covered high school sports. And then, as they say, one step kind of led to another. So I worked for a production company that did a high school sports show. And then I transitioned to, as my newspaper friends would say, the dark side, went over to broadcast, and then have just tried to be a chameleon in some ways and evolve. Started off really as a reporter and a host, and now am much more so primarily a play-by-play announcer, which I love, which is a role that I think we're seeing more and more women in across many sports these days, as more women's sports in particular are getting more visibility. So I'm really proud to be a part of that. And I think that about sums up my professional journey anyway, in terms of how I got to where I am.
Do you have a favorite sport you like to play-by-play announce?
Well, I do really love the two that I've kind of settled upon: basketball, women's basketball, and soccer. And they're very different. And if you ask me at one point during each season, I probably waver back and forth as to which one I like better. There are things I certainly like about both. I love the pace of basketball. I love the fact that there is a definite ending to the game when the clock stops. Soccer can stretch out a little more and you don't get as many breaks to collect yourself. But there's also such a beauty in the game of soccer that I love as well, and a whole rhythm to it that is all its own.
Thank you. Aimee, what is your story?
So I grew up knowing nothing about sports. Nobody in my family played sports. My dad was a cartoonist. My mom stayed at home for a while and then became a makeup artist. So sports was never a thing in my life. I went to school and really focused on a career in entertainment and television production. So I started in that, and then randomly, just by circumstances and relationships and other people changing jobs, I ended up moving over to work on the Olympics at NBC. And that was for me like an entree point into sports via entertainment, because the Olympics always, big global event like the World Cup, it is very entertaining. It's sort of a blend between the two. It opens itself up to non-traditional sports fans via the storylines and the unscripted drama. And clearly, as you hear me say this, you could tell I got sucked right into this
You
world
love it.
and then never left sports. I thought I would do it for like 2 years and then go back to entertainment. And here I am, and I love every minute of it. So it's been really, really rewarding and has taken me to places and taught me lessons, including the 9 lessons that we highlight in the book. But it taught me lessons, so many lessons I learned through sports.
Thank you. Let's go back to the book. Let's go back to being tough as a mother. I have a question for both of you. Aimee, you were talking about having it all.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a big topic, and we discussed it a lot on this podcast. My mom, interestingly, always very consciously tried teaching me, and she had 2 careers, and she had me. And she always very consciously tried teaching me that you can have it all, but it all doesn't need to happen at the same time.
I love that.
And she was very consciously telling me how, especially women's lives, more than men's lives, go through certain phases. And we have to allow ourselves not to be stressed out and want it all at the same time, but allow ourselves to recognize that there's a phase to put more focus on your family, then there's a phase where you can concentrate on your work, there's a phase to get educated and so on and so on. What are your opinions on this?
Well, one of the things I totally agree on having it all. Like that was, I want to have it all. That was like my mantra growing up. And one of the things that we learned through this book, and several of our mothers talked about it, is what is all? Yes. And I never quite put it into words, but yes, there are, to your point, different phases. And sometimes all may look like one thing. And then as your kids get older, all may look a little bit different. And one of the tough mama tenets that we talk about, we've isolated these 9 qualities that elite athletes possess that working moms bring to the table every day. And we call them our tenets of tough motherhood or tough mother tenets. But the first one we kick off with is adaptability. And that's exactly what we talk about. And women are so adaptable in how we morph and evolve. And when you're a working mom, so much of that is dependent upon what your kids need at that moment. So I would say for me, and while I never put it into words until doing this book, yeah, having it all is an amazing opportunity. But we have to be mindful that the definition of all may change during the course of our lives and our evolution. And by the way, it may also mean that some people don't want to work outside the home for a while, and that's okay too.
And thank you to your mama for that great advice, Anna. I love that, of her just modeling that for you and drilling that home, that it doesn't have to be all the time. I think that's such a good lesson. And that is another thing that I would say, gathered from a lot of the women in the book. And Aimee touched on this a little bit, but one thing that I really took away was that we define what all of it is. Others outside our world don't define that. But your family, you decide what all is for you at any given moment. And yes, it adapts and shifts as you go along throughout your life.
I want to talk more about the 9 chapters or lessons or whatever you would like to call them. I find them absolutely fascinating and so relevant for this podcast. You have already mentioned, Aimee, adaptability, which was number 1. But then there's Moxie. Will you tell us a little bit about Moxie? Because I bet you my international listeners will be like, what's Moxie?
Well, we're not going to lie. We were a little bit like, it is Moxie, but I think it fits. I had to definitely dive into the dictionary because it's a word I had heard, but maybe wasn't 100% sure. So most definitions will talk about Moxie being a strength of character or a willingness to persevere through and keep your character even when times get tough. And it doesn't have that little bit of extra edge to it too. Like, it's not just saying you're determined, because we thought about determination as being one of our tough mother tenets, but we settled upon Moxie. And part of that was just because we let the women in our book who we spoke with lead us. And I think in some instances, the themes that came through were so obvious. And we thought, okay, like adaptability, like we had some when the women talked about it, that it really made sense. That was a huge theme for them. And so we were able to put that in that part of the book. And then for Moxie, it's this almost undefinable extra little edge, belief in yourself, strength, like that you're going to get it done and you're going to do it in your own way. And we have 3 women in that Moxie section of the book who are absolutely full of their own way of doing things that are inspiring and different and amazing. And I think that's one of the things that Aimee and I both have loved is that there is no one way to go about this life of motherhood or working motherhood. You see so many different ways we can expose people to different ways of doing things. The more we can all benefit from that, because this is not a how-to book. God knows we do not know how to do it. We are learning right along with everybody else. But by sharing our experiences, sharing our struggles, there's a real strength in that.
And one thing we love about the Moxie chapter, each of the moms just own it. And it's one of those words that Jenn and I had such pleasure even just saying. Like, we love talking about the Moxie in this. And just going back to, I know you want to touch on some other of the tenets, but we had such a difficult time narrowing it down to 9. And we wanted 9 because we really wanted to stay with the 9 months of pregnancy and just keep the motherhood theme throughout. But Jenn and I sat going through each chapter, writing on index cards all of the characteristics that each one played. We put the cards on a table. We had a full day of trying to narrow it down to 9, and it was really challenging, but we love each and every one that we settled on. And as Jenn said, the moms brought us to it. Yeah. These are their stories, and then these were the themes that we found really woven throughout.
I would like to quickly talk about sacrifice. We can't talk about each one of the 9, but for me, sacrifice is really, really an interesting one because we talk a lot about sacrifice in this podcast, and it's something I've learned through my guests and their moms. This topic of sacrifice keeps coming back, and it keeps being discussed as a lesson, mostly a lesson my guests wish they learned, and mostly in the context of self-sacrifice, about this female need to nurture and take care of others and provide love through sacrifice, but also about the lack of understanding that there should be a line that we shouldn't cross, and that we also need to take care of ourselves as well. But in your book, sacrifice is a little different. It's differently defined, but I would still like you to talk about it because I think it's so important for women in general.
I mean, I think some of that goes back to the definition of what all of it is, right? Like, I had this long list when I graduated college of all the things that I wanted to do. And if I look back now, it was comical because I also wanted to do this and I also wanted to do that. Like, it can't all be done at the same time. So there were some things that I just had to prioritize. But the one thing that I learned in the early days of trying to balance it all was I also felt like I had to overcompensate at home. And I felt like self-care was not a necessity. And later on, you realize, it's that whole, that air, when you're on an airplane and they say, like, put the mask on yourself, like, that doesn't make sense, but it makes so much sense at the same time. And I think just in life, there's always going to be sacrifices, but the more things you have in your life that you prioritize, like, everything can't make the cut. And that's unfortunate. So it's really just about prioritizing. But we had some of our moms, like one that strikes me in that is Danette Layton, who runs the Women's Sports Foundation, which is this incredibly impactful organization. She talked about her sacrifice being that she had one child and she didn't feel she had the time or whatever to find that perfect time to have a second. And she's so proud of her daughter. They have such an incredible relationship, and that's all wonderful. But the one thing that really tugs at her heart is that she didn't have the opportunity to do that again.
So sacrifice more in the sense of prioritizing, as you said.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And being realistic with that and allowing yourself some forgiveness and grace and self-care.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's quickly mention the other ones. We have passion. Do you want to say anything about passion?
I think it's pretty evident. You have to have that as a mom. Be something, we always tell your children, right? Find something that you love to do. Well, motherhood, you hopefully are going into that with the same frame of mind, and you need to be passionate about it to put all the work that goes into it. So I think that, you can kind of go through them. And if there's one that speaks to you, Anna, you can stop us there.
Okay. We have passion, vulnerability, focus. Love that one. Humility. Love that one as well. And support. Just quickly tell me about support because it's so important.
Yeah, I think you wrote the support. So we each, the way we did it for those who haven't read the book yet is Aimee and I, that was our tenets were an opportunity for us to share some of our personal stories a little bit more so. We do weave our thoughts throughout and we kind of try to tie everything together like that third person in a conversation. If we're all having a chat together, we tried to do that. So I think Aimee talked about that, but we finished with that chapter. And even though you wouldn't say support is necessarily a trait that you have, and we wrestled with that a little bit just grammatically, we felt it was so important. And I think it's the biggest takeaway from our book is that we wanted this book to provide support because in whatever way that women are going into motherhood, they need to be supported, whether it's in your family, your partner, friends, you're at work, whatever it is. This is hard enough, and it is so important to have support as much as you can to do the best that you can.
And to not be alone. And we really felt it was important because we keep our struggles so private and not to keep going back to the day when I first started, but you didn't want to be vulnerable at all in the workplace and talk about the challenges that you were facing at home. You just came in, you wiped the baby drool off your shoulder pads of your nice suit and you entered into the office strong and gung-ho and you had real tight boundaries. And we want people, if you can't share it at work, that's okay. Some people in the book choose to, some people in life choose to, some people like to keep it separate. But we want this book to be that sisterhood of support, to remind you that you're not alone. Because if you're in it all by yourself, you sort of judge yourself by this false reality that doesn't even exist, this image of perfection. And our hope was that if you read the book and you see that 12-time Olympic medalist Dara Torres faces the same challenges that you do, our hope, Hall of Fame broadcaster Andrea Kramer, our hope is that if you see that they have the challenges, that you can be kinder to yourself as you navigate your way through those challenges as well. Because the toughest of mothers, they go through the same struggles that every mom does.
Yeah. Let's talk about mothers. Your mothers. Aimee, I'm going to ask you first this time. Will you please tell me about your mom, Diane?
My mom, Diane. Well, when you asked me what her name was, I have to tell the story of that because it's so funny. And we just had a recent situation with this. So my mom's birth name is Norma, is her first name. Diane is her middle name. And she grew up in Washington State, where she lives now, Olympia, Washington. And she ran away from home, went down to LA. My dad was from the Bronx. He had an assignment out in LA, and that was where they met. And after starting this relationship, she went back home to Washington. He went back to New York, and then he later sent for her, which was a very common phrase back in the day, where he wired her money the old school way, and then she hopped on a train, I think, because she doesn't like to fly, and moved to New York. And when she got to New York, all
the way from Washington, from one part of the country to the other. Okay.
Yeah. 3
we
days.
have to say what a big.
Yeah. Yes. Yes,
serious
exactly.
journey
For
by
your
train.
international listeners,
Yeah.
it's a schlep.
It's a
And the
schlep.
trains in the US are not at all like the trains in Europe. So it was probably 3 days. We've done that trip many times on a train, but it's like 3 days on a train. And when she got to New York, she decided to sort of rebrand herself and she became Diane. So she used her middle name. Fast forward, she moved back to Washington after my parents split up. And to all of her family and friends there, she was Norma, but to us, she was Diane. So we never knew what to call her. And it was this running joke. But every time she booked a flight, her legal name was Diane. So recently, I booked a flight, and I don't want to say my mom's age, but it's well into the 80s.
Okay.
I booked a flight for her to go down to see her grandson's graduation from college, and I booked it like I always had. Diane Bauer, I have a note in my phone, legal name because it's so complicated, Diane Bauer. So I book it. She calls me and she said, I got the itinerary. Thank you. I forgot to tell you I changed my name back to Norma.
Oh.
And I thought, now you change your name? Like, what was so important that we needed to do this now? And then, of course, not tell us. So we were able to change it with the airline. But it's become a running joke. So yes.
So now she's Norma.
So now she's Norma.
No,
but in
she's
New York,
Norma.
she's still Diane.
In New York, she's... I love this. I love this story so much. What is she in LA? She's in LA.
That's a very good question. I guess it's open for discussion.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about Norma.
I think you have a lot there, right?
Yeah.
She's wonderful. She's smarter than she ever gives herself credit for. She's absolutely stunning. She's tall and she's glamorous, and I'm small and less glamorous. But when people see us together, they see that we look alike. They see that immediately. And they always stop after saying that. And they say, but she's so, and then my mom will say, yes, I know, she's small. Because my mom was nearly 6 feet tall.
Okay.
And I'm hovering at 5'4" and 3/4, but we push it to 5'5". But she's smarter than she ever gave herself credit for. She's funny. My dad was a cartoonist, and she got every single one of his jokes. And yeah, absolutely, absolutely lovely.
But did you say that they separated at one point? Did she raise you by herself, or did this happen later, or?
Yep, they split kind of after. It was that textbook, like, okay, empty nester. My sister went off.
Okay.
I think my sister went off to college,
and
they split. And after a tough time, they finally found their way back to being best of friends, which was really, really nice. So when I got married, they both walked me down the aisle. They were super close. We still shared all those family moments together, really from a place of love. But I think they were just so close. They were so much better as really close friends at that point in life.
Did you find your love?
She did. We never actually talked about it being love. But I think so. She really did.
Is she happy? That's the question.
She is. She found companionship and friendships and love and yeah.
And you told me she's a makeup artist?
Yes. So she became that. She always loved that. She was always very creative. And that was a great way for her to channel it. She worked at a department store when we were all kind of in school full time. And it was like, what am I going to do with my time? So she decided to go back and just start working. And she worked at just randomly a makeup counter. And she loved it. And she just started doing it more and more. And then, really, really enjoyed it and was so skilled and talented and just always made people feel beautiful. Even up until recently, before COVID, she would volunteer at either hospitals or retirement communities, elder care communities, where she would do women's hair and makeup and just make them feel lovely.
Yeah. But so we're learning from Norma also to have it all.
Yeah, in different ways. And one of the lessons that I definitely learned from her, it was to keep evolving.
Yeah.
and put yourself in unexpected places and just keep learning and being open to that.
Thank you for that one. That's a very important one. Do you have more lessons from Norma?
Well, mine were from Diane, by the way, because this was in New York. So Norma's alter ego. So Diane, and it's funny because I called her earlier just to run these by her because she's been listening and watching the stuff that we've been doing. So hi, Mom. So she approved these, but one is to be accepting of others. My mom's so accepting, and where she lives is just so interesting. And but just to really be accepting of others and surround yourself with interesting people. Mm-hmm. And then another, I remember as a kid, she didn't remember this one, but I remember there were these kids across the street that, I don't know, they made fun of me. I have bad hair. I have curly hair, and this was before hair products, so it was a thing growing up. And
you have beautiful hair. I love your curls.
Well, because I've evolved. I've grown into them, right? But like, trust me, back in the day, it wasn't pretty. When everybody tried to have like the perfect Farrah Fawcett hair or like the straight hair of the 60s, like that was never going to be a reality for me. But there were these kids that were across the street, and I don't know, I just felt like they were making fun of me or whatever. And I remember my mom saying, you know what, when people make you feel that way, walk close to them, face your fears. And what it taught me was like going through life, don't run away from the challenges or the fears or the scary people, right? Sometimes that's just what they do to intimidate you. Like, go up to them, let them own their behavior, and don't let them passively scare you. I mean, obviously not in a dangerous situation. Run as fast as you can the other way. But for those kind of things, like, don't just let people openly intimidate you. Go up to them, face them, because sometimes that is the reaction that they're not ready for. And it's been an interesting approach. So she was actually really surprised that I still remember taking that one from her.
Yeah. And I would like to extend, if I may, if Diane would allow me, to not only people, but situations as well.
Absolutely.
To anything that scares you, not necessarily people, but whatever scares you or intimidates you, to face it. To face it and see why. Why am I scared? Why am I feeling uncomfortable? And if I throw myself into this situation, can I solve it and deal with it and make it not scary?
Right. Right. And look, we know that, you know, from uncomfortable situations comes growth oftentimes, personally, professionally. Doing any one of these, like Jenn is a broadcaster, and I don't want to minimize all the work she does to get herself prepared for something, but she's way more comfortable than I am. So she's been like the person who reminds me, like, you got this, just get out there and do this. You're going to do great. I got you. And it's, facing the fears really does lead to growth. And here we are, and I'm actually not nervous today. This is great.
Oh, this is great.
Yay.
Aimee, do you have other lessons, or can I ask you about something you wish she had taught you?
So the ones I wrote, because I'm very much of a note taker.
Okay.
So face
too.
your fears, accepting, keep growing. Like I said, just keep evolving, keep growing, and then don't overthink things. Because sometimes, you know, if you overthink things and you play out possible scenarios that may or may never happen, sometimes you miss some of the pure joy of being impulsive and just being in the moment of a situation. And I think I saw my mom doing that quite a bit, just doing something, and then sure, there may be consequences later, but like, we'll figure that out. But just being in that moment and just experiencing some pure joy that came from just something you didn't overthink.
I'm so curious, Aimee, because this was my mom's lesson, one of my mom's lessons. But she, because I'm such a nerd and a heady person, and I'm like, and she would always tell me, Anna, don't construct life. Would your mom say it, or did she just show it to you? Did she teach you this through the way she was, or did she have something to say to remind you to not overthink?
No, I think she just showed me. She just showed me she could be silly and impulsive sometimes. And I think but I would see how much joy those silly situations would give her. And I think by seeing that, it wasn't like I'm very much of a lesson person. Even in the book, I read Aesop's fables to my kids every night, and like they have a lesson and a moral of every story. So I'm definitely more that person. My mom's was more by example and illustration. And I think just seeing that really stuck with me.
What do you wish she had taught you? Is there anything important in life that you learned by yourself?
I think the one thing that sticks with me is life can be tough. Like life can be tough, it can be difficult, and that's okay because we can do tough things. And we can find joy in the middle of the tough things.
But this is so interesting. So she did not teach you this.
I think I figured, in life, we just take a little bit from so many different people. And I think no. Did she teach me that?
That's
No.
Interesting. Yeah.
Not intentionally not teaching me, but it's just something I experienced through a lot, honestly, through sports, the overcoming adversity and pushing yourself to limits you never thought you could push through, and just having that determination, that moxie, if you will, to just go after it. I think that's really where I learned it.
Oh, that's fascinating. I'm just so surprised. I'm sorry, because throughout these 175 episodes, this would be the lesson, one of the most common lessons moms would teach their daughters, either by example or, mostly by example of, they watch the mom struggle and how hard life can be and how bad things can happen and things like that. So I just want to point that out, that it's interesting that she did not teach you this, and you do wish she did.
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting.
But I found it. I got it.
You did.
I got the lesson.
You did. Thank you, life.
Exactly.
Thank you, Aimee. Jenn, let's talk about your mom, Mama Sandra.
Yes, and I just want to say that was so great hearing all that stuff about Norma Diane. I love hearing that. And there's so much that I see of those lessons in you now knowing that. So it's really cool. But yes.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
Yeah. So my mom, Sandra Hildreth, is an artist in the Adirondacks. Both my parents were artists. They're very artistic. They both still are, actually. They're divorced now, but they were together for 25-ish years, right around that. A long time. Divorced my senior year in high school, which was a really tough time for my mom in particular. I'm sure for my dad as well, but I saw more of it on my mom's side. And she was a high school art teacher for close to 30 years in Northern New York. She also was an archer. My parents both were into archery. So she was one of those people that could quietly be excellent at just about anything she tried, but she would never tell you that herself. Like she's so easily fit into the background of life that sometimes you could overlook her excellence. And I know I did that as a kid. I was a bratty first child who thought the world revolved around me. And my parents definitely helped create that environment, both good and bad. But so I wish I would have treated my mom with a little more kindness when I was a bratty teenager. But it didn't take me long. I always knew what a wonderful mother I had and still have. And I could tell her anything without judgment. I always felt fully supported. And she kind of started her life over again after the divorce and refound herself. And I got to witness that. And I think that transformation and watching her grow stronger through pain and becoming someone that she maybe didn't think she would ever be again has just been so enlightening and wonderful. And I mean, she's so happy now and lives in a community of artists and is so revered within her community and has a lot of friends. And so, yeah, she's the best.
That's amazing. I love hearing all these inspiring stories about moms that later in life just enjoying life so much, living the full life. Isn't it amazing? What have you learned from her? What do you feel are the most important things?
Yeah, well, I think number one is just as cliche maybe as this sounds, but it's just to love and how to love. She taught me how to love unconditionally. And I hope that I give that to everybody within my circle, but certainly my family, my husband and my girls, and give it back to her and give it to my dad. And but she was as supportive and loving. I never doubted her love for me, her belief in me. There was not that I could do no wrong in her eyes, but I kind of could do no wrong in her eyes, in the sense that it would never change how much she loved me. And I think having that baseline and knowing that is so important for a child growing up into an adult. So that would be number one. Courage and strength. So I definitely did see her endure. She hid a lot of, I think, the pain that she was having when she went through the divorce and all that entailed for her, because she was still right there for my brother and I in every way possible, at all of our sporting events, and cheering us on and just loving up on us like she always had. And then doing your best. As I said, my mom is excellent at a lot of things, and you wouldn't necessarily know that right off the bat because she's kind of quiet and easygoing. She's not going to be one to put herself front and center, but she is an amazing writer, an incredible artist. She figures out how to do things her own way. And that was kind of my last lesson that I was going to say, was like, find your way of doing things. So I am very much a rule follower. I would say my mom is not. She is an artist who doesn't like to be told how to do things. She's creative. She wants to figure it out on her own. And so even though I like to have a little guide that says follow 1, 2, 3, 4 and do these steps and get where you need to go, that's not really life all the time. And figuring out how to adapt and do things your own way and do all the things you want to do are definitely things my mom taught me. There was never any limitation. It was like, if you want to do this, sure. You want to be a model? Sure, I'll take your picture and send it into YM magazine. Even though, like, the reality of that back at the time, I was like, Mom, you probably should have talked some reality into me. But no, she took the pictures and helped me send them in. Whatever my dreams were, she believed in them. And so, I just read Dawn Staley's book, and Dawn talks about being a dream merchant for her players and people around her. And my mom was the dream merchant for me.
Merchant. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Is there anything she didn't teach you? Something important you wish she had taught you?
Well, I've sort of hinted at it a little bit because I was thinking about this. I mean, I always say that I think my mom's the best. And while I don't think she could have done a single thing better because she did it her way and she is who she was, so I want to make that very clear. But there are certain things that I know I do differently. But probably also some things I still need to do a little better as I think of this. Because one thing is, as I said, my parents, as the first child, they loved on me, they doted on me, they poured everything into me, they led me to believe I could do anything I wanted to do. That's all very important. I wish they kind of would have instilled in me this need to think about others a little more naturally. I was always so focused on myself and what I could achieve and what I could do. And that's important. But I do wish I wish they had given me that, like, think about others who might need help. How can you be a dream merchant for others, support others? That is something I've learned along the way, but I feel like it is something I struggle with at times. I get very one-track minded. I'm very focused on whatever it is that I'm doing, and sometimes to the detriment of helping those around me and just bettering other people. And I think that is something I wish I would have learned a little earlier on in life.
That's a very unique, I wish I have learned lesson. I never got this one before. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
It opened my eyes because I'm an only child and I could have learned that as well.
It's the good and the bad. I mean, I don't even want to say good and the bad. I think it's the two sides of a coin, right? I needed all of that belief in myself and that drive to get to where I've gotten in life and in my career. I wish I could have been looking to lift people up along the way.
Yeah.
And I really do try to do that now. I try to be a good teammate and help others. But yeah, it wasn't really a focus. It was very self-focused growing up.
Interesting.
Well, I'm going to jump in, and far be it from me to disagree with my co-author. However, I will say that I had the pleasure of interviewing one of her girls, but meeting both of them. And they talk about their mom and how kind and supportive and loving she is. So I'm going to say she figured it all out. And as I said before, for me, she knows that I'm not comfortable doing these things, and especially TV. And she'll give me like that, you got this, before every single appearance that we have done. So she figured it out and then some. And going through this project, it's tough to work with somebody else that's on something that's so meaningful. As Jenn sort of hinted at before, she was working on a project that she wanted. She was working on a book and interviewed me for the book. And I was starting kind of putting pen to paper, but had these ideas of what I wanted to do. And we ended up finding the space to collaborate. And that's really tough. You need to be with somebody that's supportive, that listens, that's going to help lift you up through this process as well. And I could not have done it with a more supportive partner than Jenn.
Aww. That's sweet. I feel
Look, this is like a therapy session. We're
It
in
is
therapy.
beautiful. I'm loving it. What a positive therapy session we have, ladies. Thank you so much. This was absolutely incredible as your book. I'm very excited about the book. I'm very grateful you wrote it. It's going to support so many women. I will put the link in episode notes so my listeners can find it easily. And thank you again for sharing your beautiful, beautiful stories, mothers, and lessons, and your third baby.
Yes. Thank you for allowing us to chat with you. It's been really nice.
Yeah, thanks for providing this platform for moms, because we know moms are so important, and they play such a key role in families, in business, in life. So thanks for giving us this platform.
Thank you. If you enjoy Thank You Mama and want to help it grow, please take the 2 seconds to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps. If you'd like to get in touch, you can send me a mail at info@thankyoumama.net. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter under Anna Teider, that's Tajder. This was Thank You Mama. Come back next week, subscribe, and tell your friends.